Good morning or afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our SAP Business ByDesign Q&A Cafe for today. It's August 19th. Today we are doing, as you can see, SAP ByDesign OData APIs. So we have Emma Nicholas with us. She is our ByDesign consultant at VistaView Solutions. She'll be going through that with you. Just a reminder, I'm recording this session, so everybody will be on mute for the duration of the session, and then this recording will be sent out with the email that goes out 2 days after this session. So look out for that. Also in the email is a registration information for our next session, which is next Wednesday, August 26th. That one is with Laura Herculo, and it's on what's new in ByDesign highlights of 2008. So look for that. And if you don't get that email, just go to our website on our resources page. You can scroll all the way to the bottom. That's where our registration list is for all Q&A cafes. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Emma. And then, I just have to make sure everybody knows this too. If you have questions throughout the session, we'll get to them. I'll help Emma with that. Put them in the questions box or the chat box, whichever one is easier for you. And I will mute myself and hand it over to Emma.
Thanks, Kayla. Our session for today is on SAP ByDesign's OData APIs that has been made available in the last few years as an alternative to the web service APIs that's already available. And it's something that we use for integration and just to pull data from SAP into an external system. As well as being able to update SAP from an external system. So our agenda for today is just to talk about what is OData and look at OData analytics and OData service APIs in SAP ByDesign, and what's the difference between the two, and then what you can use them for. Some OData FAQs, and then we move on to Q&A. So somewhere in between there, we'll hop into SAP ByDesign and take a look at these services. Okay, so so I am now sharing SAP ByDesign. So what is OData? It's open data protocol. And as mentioned, it is an alternative to be able to access records in SAP, as well as update information in SAP instead of using a web service API. It's actually much simpler. You don't have to handle XML requests and such, and you basically have it in your URL, and then you're using filters as well as selects to grab the data. You can also call functions in SAP for updating information in SAP ByDesign. Okay, so in SAP there are two APIs that are OData related. One is called OData Analytics, and it gives you access to OData reports, SAP ByDesign reports, as well as data sources. So what's the difference between the report and the data source? So the data source is the base data set that the reports are based on. So we can find them under business analytics, and then we have data source up here and reports. So under data sources, you'll see several SAP ones, some custom one you can build, some data sources that you would join and combine. And then this becomes your base for your report. And then when you hop into the report side, when you build your reports, which I believe Alex has covered several sessions, is that you can set up filters, predefined selection criteria, and different set of data elements to return on the reports. So the data sources, no filters yet, and then the reports have filters. You have custom views, custom selection criterias. So what happens when you access the reports through OData is that you're getting results that are aggregated. So if we have key figures that are in the system, um, what happens is when you change or add different characteristics or dimensions, is this the value of the key figures change based on what you put on the report. So that's an advantage of using the OData API for the analytics part. Um, for the data source is that you're accessing the data at the raw data level. So it's basically the data table. And most of the time it's used for data replication because there's no filter. So it's really just plain old information that's presented to you in a table format if you put it through into Excel. Now, so let's dive into creating an OData OData call. So you start off with you can go into the design reports. Then you can look at a report that you want to access. So I'll go look up account. Oops. Okay, so there's several in here. There's account data. So if you notice here, our button called Build OData Queries is disabled. There is a business configuration that you have to scope um, in the implementation project or a change project so that you could get this button. It's disabled because the data source for this particular report has not been exposed yet. So if I highlight account details here, you'll see that this button is enabled. So let's go into the data source. So for you to be able to access the reports through OData and Analytics is you need to expose the data source first for that particular report. You also need to expose all the data sources that that report uses. So here, what you do is you find the data source and you just click expose and you check the box. Okay, and then the reports that accesses this particular data source will have this build OData queries available. Okay, so let's switch back to the reports and look for accounts again. So now how do you know what data source is being used? If it's only one data source, you'll see that under this column called data source name. If there's multiples, you can click on this magnifying glass and it will pull up the information. Well, this one doesn't. Let's do here. It'll pull up a page with information about that particular data source. It gives you field names, key figures, and also the data sources. So if we scroll down here close to, oops, it's not showing it there. Oh, this one doesn't have it, but we have that here under account details. It's because there's only one. But if you go at the bottom here, any additional data sources would be listed. So that's how you find out what data sources you need to expose. All right, so on to building our OData query. So under account details, so I highlight that and you just click on build OData queries. And this particular report has these characteristics available. And these are the ones that's available when you're building a report in SAP ByDesign through the web page. So you basically select the one that you want to include in your select statement. So basically the result you want it to return. So in this particular one, what I want to do is I want to do country and city. So I'll just do the search here. Actually, and I also want the name. Okay, and then we want city, which is right here. Okay, so you can click on generate data query, and then on the right hand side here, you will see that it's put it together. So here is the main report section, and then this is the select. The select provides you the columns that you want your OData query to include. And then what happens is our value will be using this as the dimensions when it's aggregating that key figure. So the key figure I want to add is just a count. So it's really a simple report here that we're trying to pull. Is just I want it by city and country, and then how many accounts are under those locations. On the right-hand side here, there's a count. Inline count just gives you the total records, the format as well. And under the format, you have an option for Atom, which is XML, and then a JSON format. So some programmers prefer the JSON format so that when they call their OData call, the response they can convert to JavaScript and they can access it easily. And it's actually a preferred method if you have big data sets as well, because it's a little bit more efficient when it's processing the results. Top give me only 10 records versus 50 records. If you have over 50 records, then you could say top 1,000 or 1 million so that you can get all the records. It does limit it to 50 or 1,000 records in the response, so that it's just really for efficiency of the response time, so it doesn't time out. And then there's the skip option to move on to the next set of data if it's more than 1,000 or more than 50. Okay, so let's try this out. So we generate our data query, and it's added in our count in here, and we run it. Okay, so when you run it, it basically just calls the full URL on the browser, and it gives you the result. Each entry here is a record. Okay, and then in here you will see for the country US, Ali Kipa. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. There's 1 account. In Atlanta, there's 4, and in Beaumont, there's 1. So this is for different countries. Now, so OData is a protocol which is common. It's not proprietary to SAP. So what you could do, so there are some parameters you can add to this endpoint so that you can filter further. So for example, I want just for Canada. So what I could do is add a filter in here. Okay, and then this is just a keyword for that. And then I would put in the name of my element. So it's country code and then equal and then CA. Okay, so that would be this. It'll be country code, which is CC country underscore code. And then we press enter. So unfortunately, you can't do that on the interface. Oh, actually you can. But I'm just so used to doing that on the URL here. So now we have a smaller set of records. So if we scroll down here, we only see Canada in our result set. So let's go back and see how we can do that in the interface. So here we've only said select, which gives me all the accounts. And then there's this filter tab on the second tab there. And then we can do the filter for country code right here. So we'll go equal. And okay, and then we generate the query. And if you noticed, it added in the same filter that I typed in. If we run that, it'll give me the same result set that I have. Okay, so what can you do with this? So this endpoint, this whole thing, you can take and put it on an RSS feed onto your website, your internal websites, into Excel where you can process it more alongside with other applications information and merge them together. It can be used through integrations. You could have other systems accessing the data and then manipulating it, doing some math and stuff like that to present it to on another medium. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take this URL and copy it and then put it into Excel. So I got Excel open here, and then we'll just do it really simple. So I'll say from the web, and I will specify the whole URL in here. Okay. And it will ask you, so the reports itself, you access it through a business user. So I have my login saved here for my for that SAP ByDesign system. So I just enter my credentials. So this is the response similar to the browser. Okay, and I'll just go import. It brings in a lot more extra stuff. So we'll clean it up, and then okay, I'll say I want that there. Okay, so I got a bunch in here, so I'm just gonna get rid of it and just grab what I need. So I'll just up to there, delete these. Okay, so we got city, country, my counts. It's in a different order, but that's fine. So we got Calgary, Iqaluit, Montreal, and Toronto here. So what can you do with this? So you could have an Excel workbook or web page or whatnot calling that endpoint. Now, when we add an account here now in SAP, you can update that without changing the endpoint. So let's go quickly add an account. If I can. Okay. Okay. We'll just create a brand new account. Okay, so I'll say Canada, let's say Edmonton, Alberta. Oh, let's build in my address in there. All right, that will serve its purpose. Okay, so we just added in an account that's in Edmonton. So now let's go back to Excel. And what you do here is you just click on refresh, right? And then what we're gonna see is that we got Edmonton added in here. So nobody has to go back into SAP or anything like that. So this could be your browser or your internal pages that will pull in your OData reports. Okay, so that's for the OData reports. You have the same functionality in the data sources. So we go into business analytics and data sources. The only difference that it doesn't have, oops, sorry. Okay, it doesn't have the one where it launches the page for you. So what you would do is, let's just pick a few in random here. Is you just copy this and paste it into wherever you need. But I do like to use my browser when I'm testing my OData calls to see if it's returning the information that I want. Okay, so now when you're accessing, so let me hit cancel there. When you're accessing the data source, you actually need to configure the communication arrangement. It's accessed by a technical user, and a technical user does not consume licensing. So it's nice that you could do that, but you do need to set this up here, the analytics data source OData, and set up a communication arrangement there. And then when you're accessing the report, you need to log in using this login. So that would be the OData Analytics API. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move on and go look at the service API. So that is located under OData. So it's under Application User Management, under Input and Output Management. So what this service lets you do is access the business object in SAP. So if it's a sales order or a customer or a purchase order, then you would be accessing that particular object. When you there is no there are no standard APIs in SAP. You have to build it. You actually will need to specify what you want that OData service endpoint to have. And it follows the same structure as the business objects, as if you were developing in SAP ByDesign Cloud Studio. And it gives you a better idea of what the structure is of the data for that particular object. So how do you create one? So you just click on New, you give it a name, QA, SO, and so that basically becomes your endpoint. You do need to specify the work center that can access it, and the user that logs in will need to have access to that particular work center. So I always check include code descriptions so that when they say status code 3, then I'll know what it means. So this one's, let's do sales order. Okay, so sales orders. And then you click on select business object. And you select your business object. When this pops up, I normally pick the standard one that SAP has. And then these are the child nodes. So here is your root object, sales order, and these are the child nodes available there. So we'll say items. Okay, and oh, actually I want root. So I'll find root. Okay, and click OK. And then you check the box, and then it adds it to this side. So this is what the object has, and this is what your OData service have. So if we open this up, it has an object ID, which is a unique identifier for that particular record. I expand the left-hand side, and then this business object has all these data elements and nodes available for you to include in your OData service. So let's check a few here. Okay, and you have item. So this is a subnode. So you check off the subnode, and then you'll see that it added in sales order item on the side. And then you could specify what you need here. I'm just picking anything I can choose. Okay, so here on the right-hand side are the data elements that I've added in. In the column here, it tells you if you can actually create or update some of these data elements that are in here. If it's grayed out, it means you can't modify them. So for example, object ID is assigned by SAP. The other good thing about this is there is, if you're accessing business objects that are standard to SAP, you have some documentation that can help you. So if you click on download business object documentation, should pop up a screen for us. And you'll see some information about that object. Sometimes you'll see some sample code if you wanted to write something through a custom application in ByDesign. Okay, that's just cycling through there. All right, so let's open that up. So here it says, here's our name. We got a namespace, what it's called in the UI, in the user interface, it's called sales order. Here's some information about it, the structure, and then here's the sample code I was talking about, and then reading sales order, etc. So it's nice to have so you can better understand what the structure is of the system, and then also to understand the data that you're going to be looking at. So you need to save it, and then you have to activate it. When you activate it, you'll see a URL in here, and that's how you're going to be accessing. That would be your main endpoint, and then you access the different collections. So I'll hit close here, and I'll switch over to the one that's already in the system. Okay, so it's called TR sales order. I'll just go into edit, and then this one is very minimal as well. So I just have buyer ID, which is the external ID. So you could actually relabel this also if you wish. So and then we got the name, which is the description in the sales order. Okay, so so that's I'm pointing that out because we're going to be updating that shortly here. So it's been activated, and this is the endpoint. So when I click this, it opens it up into metadata mode, and it gives you all the different entities, and then the data elements in there. It also tells you, like, for example, is it updatable, true, filterable, true, etc. So that's how you're going to be able to see it. There's also functions in here. So you can release the sales order or query the sales order. Okay. When you remove the metadata and just access the endpoint itself, you will see the different collections that's been put together by the user interface here when you're creating the OData service. And then you can access these collections and then add different filters to them to access the information. Okay, so so what we're going to do is we're going to update the a particular sales order. So I got one prepared here. We're looking at sales order 3794 for updating. The querying and stuff like that is similar to the OData analytics because you're just retrieving information. So this one's a little bit different because we're updating. So sales order. Okay. Oops. 3974. Oops, I did that wrong. 3794. Okay, so this one is for Silver Star. Our external reference and description are blank in here. So let me just get out of there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to update it. So so we have this sales order endpoint with these collections we can use to update information. So I'll go into Postman. This could be Node.js or your C# application that would be calling this endpoint to retrieve a result. So the first thing we need to do is get a token. But let's take a look at this first. So I've added in the sales order collection in here, and I'm going to filter by ID 3794. I do have another one that just gets the whole collection in here. And then it retrieves several different entries here. So I got entry there, an entry here. So it gives me quite a bit of information, but I want to affect only this one. So we need to retrieve a particular set of information from the sales order so that we can update it. So the first thing you need to do is you can use any URL to get a token. You need to set up on the header a key called X-CSRF token. and the value will be fetch. So you can use that on the get. So when we click the send here, and then look at the headers section, you will see that there's a token in here. So we need to retrieve this value. And we're going to need this when we're updating information in SAP. If you're just reading information, you don't need this token. Okay. So the other thing that we need is, so I have my update call ready here. So where do you put that? So you actually have under header here, you have the XCSRF token, and then you just paste that token in here. So it's something that you could do in Node.js as well, is do the first call to retrieve the token. Once you have that done, you do your next call to do an update or a post to the system to write into the SAP's environment. Okay, so we ran this. We'll look at the results. And what we need here is either the ID URL, or you just retrieve the object ID. But ultimately, really, what you need is this full URL if you want to update some of this information down here. Okay, so this I've moved over into here. Okay, and then we're doing our method is a patch, which is gonna update the record, and it's this particular record, which is 3794. Okay, now on the body there, I have it as a JSON format because it's a simpler format than the XML. So we pass in a buyer ID, and I sent via OData API, and then the name. So this is the external reference ID, and this is the description. So we'll just click on send because I've already put the token in, and it's saying it's done. So, and what we're going to do is switch back into SAP, and we'll just refresh this, and then you'll see the external reference is there now. And then if we go here, you'll see that the description is also filled in. So, so that's how you would update SAP information. So I didn't show you, but you do also need credentials. So under authorization, you do have to pass in a username and password. And this particular user is a business user, so it will require a license in SAP. Okay, so I'll move on to some of the other pieces of information about OData. Okay, so on this call, might be easier to see in the other one. I'm just going to grab this and put it into the browser. All right. So that's just retrieving, and then so I'm just pulling in the whole sales order collection, and it's thinking because there's so many records in the system already. So when that's done, I do have an add-in in here that will change the format for us so that it's a little bit readable. Okay, it's done. So, okay, so now we see entry number 1 here, and then another entry here. These are the individual sales orders. And then if we scroll all the way to the bottom, see this scroll bar is so, I think it's pros on me. Okay. Let's see if it'll get us there. Okay, so it made it to the very, very end of our results. But at the very end of this, you will see, you may or may not see this link to the next set of records. So what's happened here is it's only given you 1,000 records. So what this link now gives you is the next set of records in the system. So this is only 1,000. And then you have to get the rest by clicking on this link or calling this. If it's gonna let me. All right. Okay, and then this one, I'm just gonna put in the browser, it's just more space in there. So what it's actually done is actually skipped up to 1001. So it takes you to record 1001, and then gives you a new set of data records. And then this is how you would do some sort of pagination in the result set. Because as you can see, so this one doesn't have a link anymore, which means there's no more pages to retrieve. So this one took a little while, right, for it to render. If you see the scroll bar here at the bottom, it's a really thin one compared to this one where, well, it's actually similar, but there's actually just, if you have more and more records, so as you add in this particular one, sales orders in the system, there's going to be more and more records in the system. So you could do the pagination method. The other way to improve performance is to have a smaller data set that you're returning. So you have this one, there's not a lot. So the more you have in here, the more processing time is required. The other thing as well that you could do is the format. So I'm just going to change it to format JSON. And then, okay, and then let's change that one. I think it's still thinking as well. Oh, I was too impatient. Okay, so here is a different structure. I can't tell if it was any quicker than the other one, but it seemed like it. But as you can see, there's a little less clutter in the data that it presents to you when it's in the JSON structure. So it's a little bit more efficient when you're retrieving big data sets. Okay, so let's talk about the top and next record, JSON versus Atom format. Now, okay, so now let's talk about the two different versions. So there's the OData Analytics, which was on the report side, and then there's this OData Service API, which is access to the business object directly. So what's the differences? So on the OData Analytics, you can only read data. Okay. On the OData Service API, you can update data. You can create new records. You can call functions to affect the records, and you can also read data. So that's, I guess, a pro on the OData Service side. Now on the OData Analytics, you can have filtered information and aggregated information already. Because it's a report, the SAP already puts this information together and calculates it in SAP before it gives it to you. When you access the data individually by business objects, such as this one, you'll need to retrieve key information in here and then do the math in your application. So that's a big advantage of using the OData Analytics. So you build a report in SAP and access it through OData, or access the OData source, or the data source, sorry. So that's a big plus on the OData Analytics. And then there's the licensing as well difference. So if you're accessing the OData Analytics report and the OData Service API, you're accessing it using a business user, which means they need to have the proper credentials to the work centers that you're accessing the report on, and also a license. If you're accessing the OData data source, then you would be accessing it through a technical user, which has no licensing cost. Okay, so that's the end of the demo. We could like maybe proceed to some questions. I do have a list of questions that was emailed to me before. So if there's no questions, I can go through that.
I don't see any questions, Emma, here. Just a reminder, you can type your questions in the questions box or the chat box as well. But yeah, if you want to go ahead with those questions you have already, Emma. Oh, I have one actually.
Perfect.
I just have to, sorry, sometimes it's hard to read in here. Okay, are business users licensed able to access the OData business analytics reports, or is it only available via a technical user?
Okay, so the analytics reports, the reports are a business user. And then the data source is the technical user. So let me switch over here. So if you're accessing it through here, let me just move this question. Through this, then you would need a business user. If you're creating your OData URL here, then you would be accessing using the technical user. Does that answer the question?
They said, okay.
Okay, so I don't see any other questions. So I'm going to go through some of these. Okay, so one of the questions that was emailed to me was, need OData access in Excel with single sign-on. So I'm not sure if everyone is familiar, but you can set up SAP for single sign-on so that when you go into the login screen, it logs you in automatically. So so in Excel, you can call it like I showed you, right? But what happens with a single sign-on? Because you're logging in as a business user. So what you need to do is add in a parameter at the end of your call. So here is my call. Ooh, that's really long. And then you add in SAML2. And then basically you're disabling it. Okay, so you're basically adding in this when you're putting in the URL. I don't know if everybody could see that into Excel. Probably for your other applications also that would be using this endpoint. Okay. All right. So the next question, I don't know who that question came from, but so if there's any other questions there, just let us know. OData queries are limited to 500 records and makes it hard to pull information for the external reporting needs. So I think we kind of touched base on that during this. But here's the points that I've noted in here. Okay, so there's the top functionality, which I don't think I went through. So here is our sales order collection. We talked about the skip token, but if you really want to go and grab everything, so you go, this was gonna run for a while. So you can go top 100,000, right? We know this is only like maybe 2,000 records in here, but you could go like this and it'll give you all the records. Now the downside to it is it will take a while, so it'll think, right? So you'll see this for a while if you are using the browser, and then there will be wait time if you're using Node.js, for example, if you're waiting for a response back. The other one I noted is that next functionality on the link. And then you reduce the number of dimensions we talked about. So you basically just return just what you need, and then switching to JSON format instead of XML. So those are the things that you can use. The other thing that was suggested too, it's going to be hard to demonstrate, was if you're accessing OData analytics, is you can have calculations and dimensions done in SAP when you're building the report. So if you have an efficient report that runs quick, then your OData service for that particular report will be quick as well. So if your report is slow and you're using that as your base record, it actually timed out this one. So when you're using that as your API, your analytics API, then it will encounter that same issue because it's trying to render that report based on the dimensions that you send over and the data that you want to retrieve. But that all is really based on how the report is built. So the more efficient that you could make the report in SAP, so I'm talking about this report. So if you can make an efficient report that runs quicker, then your OData service that calls it will also be quicker. All right. Are there more questions?
There are more questions here, Emma.
Okay.
They're rolling in.
I
So,
can't see it very well.
okay, it's okay. I'll read it out and then you can just, if you can't
Okay.
understand, you can work through it. First one, if you're disabling SAML2, does that mean you can't use SSO with OData?
I don't know enough about that, but I know that's what you need to do to be able to call it. There might be a way around that. It's just really for, security, right? So rather than disabling that. The other thing too with if there's really a concern about disabling the OData call, the SAML2 through OData is, I don't know if this is reassurance or not, but if you're using a business user, you also specify authorizations for that user. So which can limit the data set that it brings back. So that there's your protection there also. But if somebody forgets their username and password and locks themselves out, that's a different issue, right? Because with single sign-on, you don't have to really remember. So for that particular one, I'm not sure if you can use SSO with OData calls, but we can call it by disabling it.
All right, the next one. Sometimes size of data sets are too big for reports based OData calls. You have to set up filter in a report to get it. What about calling this data from data source directly?
Okay, so it's the same. So if
Yeah.
you have over 50 characteristics in your report or your data source, it will give you that complaint saying, there's too many, then you have to do, I can't remember the exact same, I can't remember the exact error that it tells you, but actually I have some notes in here. It says too many drill down objects is your error. It's just there's just too many characteristics to return. So you need to limit it to under 50.
Okay, next one.
By
Can you,
doing the select. Does that?
sorry, I thought you were done.
Okay.
Okay, next one. Can you set a filter inside of OData source?
No. No, you can't. You can set it once you've put it together. So basically you will actually pull the filter into the data set. You will pull all the data into your data set and then add a filter on your OData call. So in this example, okay, if you notice here, you can add filters after. So not the data source itself. Is that what you're asking? Or on the OData call?
I think this is part of the question. They say I'm talking about cases when filter part of your OData query is not enough.
Yeah, so you can add additional filters on parameters on reports, but not the data source. That's that. But it's when you're doing filters on the data source, when you first call it, it retrieves everything in that data set. And then it'll be the OData protocol that would be filtering the information. On the report side, if you send a filter off of the parameters, then that gets processed inside SAP, and then sent into the OData service, so it's a little bit faster. But again, it's something that you would set on the filter on the URL. On the back end, that's how that works. But it's on the reports, not the data source.
Okay, next question. How many items, I'm assuming, can I select for one OData query in order to avoid query crash?
Okay, so SAP said 50. I've not tried 50. So that's, I'm going by that, but it really is the information that you retrieve, and if it's a report, how efficient the report is, and then if it's a data source or an OData service is what you're retrieving back. So to really avoid the crashes with data sets that grow in time, they recommend that you use that next and skip um, option for paging through the record set, and that would avoid the crashes. We do that same thing with the web service APIs also for information that just grows in time.
All right, next one. Are you aware of any documentation available on using SSO with OData that might offer additional information on using SSO-enabled business users with OData?
I've only found one, and that was how to disable it so that we can call the OData call.
Okay, they said, okay, thanks. Last question I see here. Oh, I think it's just a comment. Thank you. It means pulling from data source will not work for me. All right, well, if that's it, that was a lot of questions. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, someone said.
Oh, I actually have a couple more questions if people are still on. Nope.
Yeah, people are still here.
Okay, so they sent me a lot of questions. Okay, so what's next? Oh, here, what is OData source provided for resource load is not working. Okay, so I'm not quite, that's very specific question. I tried it earlier, and what I found was you do need to, I think my screen is, no, I don't want to save the changes. Okay, so it's a particular data source when you build queries on. So what is that called again? Resource. Okay. Okay, so resource load. So for it to work, you need to make sure you expose the data source that it uses. So I went to the magnifying glass. Oh, actually, it's not the resource. It's was it resource load? Yeah, resource load. So, okay, so this is the data source for that. And if you notice here, oh, data source for resource load. That's what we wanted to go look at. So I'm just gonna click this. Okay, so this particular data source uses this data source right here. So you need to expose this also to OData for you to be able to use that report. So where's that load? Okay, I'm not having any success finding this. Okay. Oh, there's these two. Sorry, guys. So it's these two. So the question was, this wasn't working. And the reason why it won't pull in is because you need to make both of these exposed to OData. Okay. And then data dictionary for SAP ByDesign is needed to support understanding how data elements are connected. OData service. So I showed you earlier. So that is true. There's several ways you can access the data dictionary in SAP, and one's through SAP Cloud Studio. And then there's a repository explorer there that lists all the business objects and its child nodes. It is individualized and it's not visual, so you can't see the relationship between sales orders and out, outbound deliveries, for example. But you will see sales orders and then sales order items and price components, for example. So it gives you a better understanding of the data that you're trying to access as well as the data that you're retrieving. The other is the way I showed you is when you create an OData service API, you can go into the documentation area. And so it's a little bit more labor intensive because you have to go create it for that object, but you can access it through the SAP ByDesign interface. So you don't need to install Cloud Studio for it. And then I think this is the last one, SOX reports. It says need a way to automate standard controls that finance can run and not have IT run them. And not run several reports in order to produce one report for the auditors. So in particular, supplier change, purchase order reports, and then they need to run it for a period of time. And I think they evaluate daily reports and create large one. Okay, so unfortunately, the change log is not accessible in through OData or web service, or have a data source that we can access. It is, however, accessible through the screen on most of the objects that gets updated. So again, it's a kind of make work project if you want it into one report. Now it says SAP. Actually, SAP has built extra data sources before and data sets and exposed other objects in the system, but we do have to go through the idea place that they've set up for partners and users of the system. And the way it works is you post your requirements there, not what you want to have, and then people vote on it, and then SAP assesses it, and then figures out if they want to include it in their roadmap. So I think when we get, I think it's 15 votes from different companies is when they actually take a look at it, to assess it, not to do it, to make an assessment, and they may need to go back and forth with you to iron out details when it's the case. So the other option is actually, I think it'll be more expensive option, is we need to know specifically what business objects you want to keep track of. And then as we listen to changes in the system into those objects, for example, a PO or a supplier, we can record that in a custom object, or record a change in a custom object, and then you can report off of that. And we can create a data source for it. But it's very specific on what your auditor requirements are, and it's very specific to you because there might be certain fields that you don't want to know about if it was changed or not, right? So so it's really specific, and then it is depending on what you want to track and how much detail you want, that could get, that would be a lot of programming effort. And that's all I got for questions. I've gotten through my list.
Great job. I just have one last, it's not a question, it's a comment, it says.
Okay.
It says I have experienced a filter not working on the OData URL from design reports, and I was able to copy the report and enter a filter on the new report, such as a date constraint, and then it worked out on the OData pull. So there you go. What else do we got here?
The dates are a bit odd. It depends on the date. There's a data offset and there's also date and time. So that might make a difference. And those brackets make a difference also sometimes when you put the filters on. I don't know when, but there's instances where when I put a filter on and I don't put a bracket between these ends, that it doesn't give me any results. When I put it in, it works for me. So so that's just something to keep in mind. But that's good. Yeah, there are. I think it's specific to OData. I don't know if it's specific to SAP that it's like that, but I might be wrong on that one.
All right, so it is 101, so we'll cut this short. There was a lot of great questions for this. Maybe we'll run this session again because it was so popular, but thank you so much, Emma, for your time.
You're
Please,
welcome.
yeah, please look out for the next week's our session on what's new in ByDesign for the highlights of 2008 for those exciting changes for ByDesign. So we'll see you next week and have a great rest of your day.
Bye, folks.